Woman was God's second mistake. That quote hits like a slap in the face. A single sentence from Nietzsche, short and sharp, but it rattles everything you think you know about love, relationships, even human nature. It doesn't ask for your agreement. It demands a reaction, shock, anger, curiosity. But Nietzsche didn't just pull that line from thin air. He inherited that way of seeing from someone even darker, someone who didn't just flirt with bleak ideas, but lived inside them. A man who saw suffering as the core of existence. That man was Arthur Schopenhauer. This video isn't about hate. It's not about justifying ugly beliefs. It's about understanding where these thoughts came from and why they still hit a nerve today. Schopenhauer wasn't writing pickup lines or trying to go viral. He was diagnosing something he believed was deeply wrong with the human condition. And as brutal as his words are, they open a door we rarely walk through. A door that leads straight into the uncomfortable questions we often avoid. So, today we look at Schopenhauer's views on women, not to praise them, not to condemn them, but to understand the framework behind them. And more importantly, to see if the pain behind his words still echoes in us, quietly, privately. But to really understand what he said, we need to start at the foundation of his philosophy, because he didn't just hate women out of bitterness. He believed the entire universe was built on suffering. Schopenhauer believed life is driven by one force, not God, not reason, not love, but a blind, unconscious hunger he called the will to live. This will doesn't think, it doesn't care, it just wants to continue. It wants to exist, expand, reproduce, and repeat, forever, through hunger, desire, mating, and eventually death. Everything we are, our ambitions, our passions, even our relationships, is, to him, just a mask. A disguise the will wears to get what it wants, more life. We think we choose. We think we fall in love or chase dreams for our own reasons. But according to Schopenhauer, we're not in control. We're puppets. The will pulls the strings, and we just follow along. Even happiness, he believed, is a lie. We chase it endlessly, only to find ourselves bored the moment we catch it. He said, life swings like a pendulum between pain and boredom. When we lack something, we suffer. When we finally get it, we get restless. And so, we chase the next thing. It never ends. In this bleak cycle, Schopenhauer saw men and women not as equals, not even as two sides of the same coin, but as completely different tools used by the will for one purpose, to reproduce the species. His views on women are, without question, painful to hear. He said they're more emotional, more deceptive, more focused on the present. And while it sounds like pure hatred at first, he claimed these were not moral flaws, but biological functions, designed by nature, perfected by the will. To Schopenhauer, woman is not a failed version of man. She's something else entirely, something far more effective. She's nature's best creation for keeping the species alive. Her instincts are built for survival, nurturing, caregiving, and choosing the strongest partner to protect her and her children. She's not designed for abstract thought or noble sacrifice. She's designed for life, right here, right now. She doesn't seek truth in the clouds. She seeks stability, food, shelter, security, continuity. And that's not a weakness in his eyes. It's her role. A role defined not by society, but by nature itself. The man, however, is the anomaly, the strange rebel, the only being, according to Schopenhauer, who can say no to the will. He can abandon comfort and throw himself into causes that have nothing to do with survival. He can starve for art, die for honor, or spend decades on a pointless invention that benefits no one, but feeds something deeper inside him. Something unexplainable. Something beautiful. And in those moments, when man creates something for no practical reason, or gives up everything for an ideal, he isn't serving the species anymore. He's stepping out of the system. He's saying no to the will. That's why, in Schopenhauer's world, man's greatest acts, art, music, philosophy, sacrifice, aren't just impressive. They're acts of rebellion, sacred madness, because they break the loop. They defy biology. But woman, she remains, in his view, the symbol of the will's triumph, the guardian of life, the one who pulls man back into the cycle. She brings him back to survival, to routine, to the real world. And nowhere does this struggle show up more clearly than in love. To Schopenhauer, romantic love isn't magical. It's not sacred. It's not even personal. He called it one of the greatest illusions ever created by the will to live. A trick, a performance, a beautiful costume hiding an ugly purpose. Reproduction. He believed when a man falls madly in love, he's not choosing anything freely. He's being chosen by nature, by biology, by the will itself. Everything he feels, everything that feels unique or powerful or meant to be, is just the will trying to get him to reproduce. He argues that men are drawn to youth, beauty, and health, not because they admire beauty in some noble way, but because those traits suggest fertility, reproductive success. And women, in turn, are drawn to strength, resources, and confidence, not because they admire strength, but because those things help protect and provide during motherhood. So, what we call love, this deep poetic longing we celebrate in songs and movies, is, in his eyes, just nature playing puppet master, pulling strings, getting what it wants. And once the job is done, once reproduction happens, that spell fades, that fire cools, that soulmate feeling begins to feel like routine. And the relationship becomes less about passion and more about survival, about bills, parenting, schedules, and security. To Schopenhauer, this shift isn't just sad, it's inevitable. The will doesn't care about happiness. It only cares about continuation. And once the goal is met, once the species is secured, everything else becomes irrelevant. But this is also the point where his view of women turns even darker. Because he believed women, consciously or unconsciously, understand this game better than men. He said they know deep down that their power lies in being desired, and they use that power through beauty, charm, seduction, vulnerability, not out of malice, but instinctively, to attract the strongest provider, to secure stability. In his essay, he wrote that a woman who marries for love is actually securing a contract of lifetime support, and a man who marries for love is giving himself up completely. He sacrifices his freedom, his direction, his purpose, for a feeling that isn't even truly his. He's been tricked. Now, is this harsh? Absolutely. Is it oversimplified? Of course. But before we dismiss it all as bitterness, we have to ask, haven't we seen versions of this play out? How many men, full of talent, purpose, fire, suddenly shift their entire lives around a relationship? How many walk away from their dreams, their passions, their missions, just to maintain peace in a relationship that once felt magical? And how many times does that same man later feel lost? Like he gave too much, like something inside him was quietly erased. Schopenhauer doesn't just point fingers. He gives this feeling a name. He builds a full philosophy around it. He says this is what the will does. It seduces us with feelings so powerful that we surrender our highest self without realizing it. He describes love like a beautiful trap, one you step into willingly, even joyfully. But once you're inside, you start to see the bars. And for Schopenhauer, this wasn't theory. It was personal. It came from the deepest wound in his life, his mother. Her name was Johanna Schopenhauer. She wasn't a traditional woman. She was brilliant, independent, a published author, a respected intellectual who hosted some of Germany's most famous literary salons. But their relationship was toxic. She saw him as arrogant and dramatic. He saw her as shallow and manipulative. Their letters are full of insults, blame, and coldness. And this bitter dynamic shaped everything he wrote about women. When he says women are vain, emotional, and lacking depth, it's hard not to see his mother in every word. His writing wasn't just philosophical, it was personal, a theory born from pain, a son trying to turn heartbreak into logic, trying to make his suffering feel universal, not private. And understanding that doesn't excuse his words, but it does explain them. At the core of it, Schopenhauer didn't just hate women, he feared them. Not in the obvious sense, but in a deeper, more philosophical way. He saw women as the most effective agents of the very force he despised, the will to live. Not evil, not cruel, but powerful in a way that no logic or system could ever tame. Think about it. Man can discipline himself, build empires, master philosophy, climb mountains. He can live by structure and reason, but then desire enters the room. A woman appears, beautiful, radiant. She doesn't argue, she doesn't need to. Her power isn't in logic, it's in presence, in what she awakens. The man who once moved like a warrior starts stumbling. His focus blurs, his path bends. And that's what Schopenhauer feared the most, that no matter how strong a man is, how principled or focused, desire can pull him off course. He becomes a servant again, not to her, but to nature, to the will. And the tragedy is, he might never even notice it happening. In her, Schopenhauer didn't see a person. He saw nature in disguise, a smiling, beautiful force sent by biology to seduce the mind, distract the spirit, and return the man to the cycle he was trying to escape. To him, woman wasn't weak. She was dangerously strong, not by violence or intellect, but by instinct. She could undo a man without lifting a finger. And when you look around today, this warning still feels strangely familiar. You see men on a mission, builders, thinkers, leaders, suddenly give everything up because of a single relationship. You watch their goals dissolve, their standards drop, their identity shift, all in the name of love, or what they think is love. And what's the result? He loses the very thing that made him attractive in the first place: his independence, his edge, his mission. He becomes needy, unbalanced, dependent, and eventually, the same woman who once admired him starts to feel repelled. Not because she's cruel, but because something in her biology senses what he's lost. Schopenhauer saw this happen again and again, and he wasn't the first or the last to speak about it. But he did something rare. He gave it a structure, a name, a brutal clarity. And yes, it was drenched in pain, but it also had a warning embedded in it. Don't hand over your life for a feeling. Don't confuse instinct for freedom. Don't trade your soul for a fleeting illusion. He's not telling men to become heartless. He's not saying love is poison. What he's saying is, know yourself first. Know what drives you, know your weakness, know your mission, so that when desire comes, and it will, you meet it with awareness, not blind surrender. The goal isn't to reject women, it's to stay rooted, to build something inside yourself that can't be moved by a smile or a touch or a romantic fantasy. Something unshakable, a mission, a code, a center that holds even when everything around you tempts you to drift. Because the truth is, love can be beautiful, but only when it's chosen with open eyes, not as a lifeline, but as a companion, not to complete you, but to walk beside you while you remain whole. Schopenhauer gave us bitter medicine, but like all bitter things, it forces clarity. It strips away illusions. And in that clarity, we find a question worth asking. Are you living from instinct or intention? If you made it this far, I salute you. You've walked through some of the most uncomfortable ideas ever put on paper. And you didn't flinch. You stayed. You thought. You felt. Now I want to hear from you. In the comments, tell me. Have you ever felt that pull between your purpose and your passion? Have you ever seen a man lose himself in love, only to regret it later? Your insights matter. Your voice helps build this community of reflection and strength. If you've reached this point, drop the word "will" in the comments. That's how we'll recognize each other, those who chose to dive deep. And if this message hit you, if it opens something in your mind or heart, support this journey. Subscribe, like, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because here, we don't run from the dark. We face it, and we learn. Until next time, stay centered, stay sharp, stay free.